Hi everybody, I'm Sig Trent, game designer, co-creator of Everyday Heroes, and the indivisible leader of Sig Trent Games. Today we're going to be updating you on what's going on with Sig Trent Games in week number 9. I'll be offering some game design advice, and finally I'll talk about my week in life and in gaming. So let's start with Sig Trent Games, week 9. I can't say that there's been any game design or exciting game development news this week. I didn't get a chance to work on Shotgun Fantasy like I intended, but I will be hard at it this week, so we should have cool stuff to talk about in the week to come on the week 10 video. Sales this week, we still have Everyday Heroes hero sheets coming in. A little bit slow, but nonetheless progressing. So every week make a little bit more money on those, which goes into the fund to help work on Shotgun Fantasy and Everything Awesome Wrestling when that gets ready to go as well. So far, so good. Debatable Actions is also out there selling through Lewis Porter Jr. Designs, but I don't see direct sales number for those. Indirectly, I do get my payments for my royalties, but it's a little hard to track now that there's 2 products through that channel, exactly which one is bringing in the money. I presume most of the new sales are Debatable Actions. So far it's about 2 to 1 with Shadow Markets, but I would expect Shadow Markets to have a little bit of a broader appeal than Debatable Actions, which is a little more of a niche product, but is also pretty cool. If you like Everyday Heroes and you want to check those out, definitely worth checking out. We've done some logistics this week. Did an art order templates and art order processing. Basically everything I need in order to ask artists to make work, to keep track of the progress of those works, and to record what pieces of art I need for a book, and at what status they're at, and all that kind of stuff. Just art management logistics for a gaming company. Since that is coming up. Usually you want to start on art on a book pretty early into its development because you need some promotional images in order to talk about the game and to do Kickstarters and things like that. So that's going on currently. I did a new video in which I use our hero sheets and Sidekick from Evil Genius Games in order to make a wise hero character. I plan to do some more of those videos in the future. Those ones are kind of partly to advertise Everyday Heroes to people who maybe have not played it before, also to demonstrate to people who have played Everyday Heroes how good the hero sheets are. We'll probably be making some more videos like that in the future, so look forward to that. That's about all the news I've got for Sig Trent Games this week. There's some kind of related stuff, but I'm going to talk about that at the end of the video, or just things going on in the TTRPG space. All right, it is time for the game design tip of the week. And this week we're going to be talking about dice feelings. No, this is not the feelings that the dice have or how they feel in your hand. It's how it feels as a player to interact with different types of dice rolls that are similar, but a little bit different. So let's dive into that. Let's say you're going to be doing a damage roll that's going to be doing around 24 points of damage. It's a pretty high damage roll, probably some plan or a spell or something like that rather than a weapon. But at any rate, you have a number of different options to generate this for dice. You can use 2d12, grab those big 12-sideds. You can go 3d8, you can do 4d6, or you can do 6d4. And what they have in common is they can all do a maximum of 24 points of damage. One thing that makes each of them different is their minimum. So that is going to be the number of dice. So if you roll 2d12, the lowest you can roll is 2 1s. If you roll 64, the lowest you can roll is 6, which would be a 1 on 6 different d4s. They are also going to have different averages because the average of a pool of dice is going to be between the lowest number rolled and the highest number rolled, not between 0 and the highest number. So between 0 and 12, the average is 6. But on a 12-sided dice, it's actually between 1 and 12, so the average is 6.5. And then you're going to multiply that by the number of dice that you roll. So 2 times 6.5, 2d12 is 13. However, 64, the half of a die 4, is 2.5, and if you multiply that by 6, you're going to get 15. So in actuality, 64 is the best average damage you're going to get between those 4 sets of dice. And savvy players might realize this. Of course, human psychology is often bigger is better, and the biggest number that I hear is the 2d12. That sounds like a bigger number to me than 64. So unintuitively, people might assume that the 2d12 is the best roll in this selection. So one thing you do need to think about sometimes with these kinds of rolls is what the intuitive sense of what is better if people need to make a choice between one or the other. There is more to it, which we will get into. They each have a different distribution. So whenever you roll more than one dice, you get something called a bell curve. And it's a little bit like the shape of my portrait here in this video. Starts low on one end, where you get, let's say we're doing the 64. Rolling 6 dice and getting 1 on each of them is a pretty low probability. It's 1 in 4 times 6. And getting a 4 on all those dice to get the maximum of 24 is also a very low probability, other end of the chair, which is, again, going to be 1 in 4 times 6 chances. Now, the odds are that some of the dice are going to be high and some of the dice are going to be low, and you are statistically more likely to give it a rather average number, which is going to be somewhere on the top of my head. The highest percentage chance is going to be some number around 15, probably between, say, let's 13 and 16 or so. That's going to happen a lot when you roll those dice. On the other hand, 2d12 is a flatter plane, because it's only 2 times whatever number it's going to be. So it's 1 to 12, but that only happens 2 times. So it is a flatter distribution, with the 24 and the 2 being a bit more likely than the 6 and the 24 in the set of 64. So you're going to get more consistent feeling numbers with a larger group of smaller dice than you will with a smaller group of larger dice. So if you want something to feel very random, a lower number of large dice are better. If you want something to feel very consistent, a larger number of small dice are better. And we'll talk about applying that a little bit later. The next things to consider are the other mechanics in your game system that could modify these kinds of rolls. So in Everyday Heroes, for instance, we have something called a dice step. And a dice step will take a d4 and make it a d6, or a d6 and make it a d8. A d8 becomes a d10, a d10 becomes a d12, and then going back down the line. You can't go higher than a d12, you can't go lower than a d4. So if we take something like 2d12 and we lower it by 1 dice step down to 2d10, then the maximum damage goes from 24 to 22. However, we take something like 4d6 and we lower it to 4d4, then the maximum damage is going down by, I gotta think about that, 4, right? So considerably more. So dice stepping means that the impact of going down dice steps or up dice steps is increased when you have larger numbers of smaller dice than smaller numbers of larger dice. Likewise, we also have a dice add and dice subtract mechanic in Everyday Heroes, where, especially at high levels, some heroes can roll an extra damage dice, or roll less. Well, usually always roll more. I'm not sure if we actually have any take away dice mechanics, but it's certainly something that is in the scope of the rules. In those cases, having high single damage numbers is going to have a much bigger impact by adding dice and removing dice, because you're adding a d12 or removing a d12, than if you're rolling a pool of d4s, because it's just another d4 or 1 d4 less, it'll feel less impactful. So that's one of those things to consider if a character has access to those kinds of mechanics. How do they interact with the kinds of damage that you're handing out to them or handing out to all characters in general? Because players are very quickly going to catch on to that one. If they get an extra dice, they're going to want to be rolling big dice weapons and big dice attacks and things like that. So those are all things to take into account. Now, which one is better and which one is worse? Well, we don't know yet. Before you do any game design, first you want to understand the impact of your choices, and then you want to understand the needs of what you're trying to do. So let's take a look at a few situations. Again, we're going to assume this is a damage roll of some kind. So let's take a rifle versus shotgun. So a shotgun fires usually what's called a shot cartridge, which is a bunch of little BBs, little tiny things. They vary in size, really, but it shoots a whole bunch of them out of the end of the gun. They spread out a bit and have the effect of giving you a greater chance to hit a smaller target, because there's all these little BBs. They scatter in different directions, so if your aim is a little bit off, you still might get a few of those to land on target. This is really good for shooting at moving targets or shooting when you're running around. That's why we give it the shot property, which gives you an advantage on an attack roll when you're up really close, because some of those things are going to land. Versus a rifle fires a single round, and if you miss, you miss. Now, if your target's really big and you want to hit center mass or something, then there are more damaging shots and less damaging shots. However, the bullet doesn't have a chance to half hit things, right? It's either hitting or it's not hitting. So we have a kind of an all or nothing feeling with the rifle, and we have some probability with the shotgun. So when I did shotgun damage, I generally used 2d6. And when I did a rifle, I did 1d12. Because it's going to feel a little bit more all or nothing. You're getting those kill shots, or you shot them somewhere really not very important, as where the shotgun is always going to do a certain amount of damage, so it feels more reliable and consistent. It's not exact modeling of the real world, right? It doesn't really work that way. But intuitively to players, it's going to feel a little bit more like the shotgun is this kind of reliable weapon, and the rifle is this sort of pinpoint weapon that where if you hit them right, it's very devastating. If you hit wrong, not so much. And you have about an even chance of either of these things happening, of a grazing hit or a kill shot. This is where the shotgun is just reliably painful. All right, enough said about that. Let's consider something that's not a weapon. How about a environmental hazard? So you've got a spike trap, right, which maybe you're going to fall down and there are some spikes, some pungy spikes or something that you can hit. And the real danger of the trap isn't the falling, it's those spikes. Versus falling down a 30-foot cliff or something, right? Which is pretty much guaranteed to hurt a lot, like if you actually fall down. So we probably want to use the larger pool of dice for the falling and the smaller pool of dice for the spike trap. Because the spike trap maybe doesn't hurt you that bad. So there's a pretty decent chance that you roll low, but also a spike might go through your neck. And that's a pretty high chance of really getting hurt badly. There's not a lot of like, well, it hurt some to fall in the spikes. As we're falling down the cliff, we know we're going to take some damage, for sure. It's not going to be good. But it's also not going to be a pinpoint shot to a vital organ or something either, likely. It's going to land, and it's going to hurt all over. So that wider, higher probability of a middle damage range feels more correct for falling. Next, we could say spells. Let's take Fireball versus Lightning Bolt. It's a lot like the shotgun effect. A fireball is a big area. It's going to hurt, but it's going to hurt all over. The lightning bolt, if it goes by you, yeah, you might get some static shock or something like that. You might get hit with an expanding sound wave. It's different things that can happen with lightning. But it's going to hurt the most if it strikes you dead center, and then it's going to really be probably very bad. So again, we want to probably use the lightning bolt with the lower but large dice, so we get that feeling of it could go low, it could go high. And the fireball, we probably want to have more smaller dice, so it feels very consistent. If you're in the middle of a ball of fire, you're not going to enjoy it, but it's not going to like critically hit you somehow, right? So that is dice feeling and how I apply it to game design, especially when it comes to damage dice. On another one, maybe we'll talk a little bit about attack roll dice and dice pools and how you can use that for accuracy and get different feels. But today, we're going to stick with the damage. What's up next? Sig's week in gaming. Well, I did play a lot of games, even if I didn't design a lot of games this week, so let's run that down. Continuing from last week, I'm still playing Vampire Survivor. It's become a bit of a nightly ritual this week to take a character, try to get them up to a high level, and unlock a new character I can play the next day. So I've been doing that throughout the week and unlocked quite a few characters. It's a fun game. Key piece of trivia, there's no vampires in Vampire Survivors. It's very strange. Apparently there were conceptually originally, but basically it doesn't have vampires. I mean, I guess that's open to interpretation. The characters could be vampires, but they're not explicitly vampires. Also played a little Phasmophobia this week, hunting ghosts with Anne. That's always a nice, relaxing thing to do. So we did some of that. We did one of the weekly challenges, which was hunting a vampire in a school. I normally don't like that map because it's very big, so the ghost could be anywhere. But on both of the runs we did, we found an artifact, which allowed us to quickly pinpoint the ghost location. So we were able to hunt the ghost. We got it wrong once, so we got it right once. You get a series of clues, and sometimes it's not worth sticking around. Your sanity drops lower and lower. So you have to decide whether you want to bail out and take a guess, or you want to stick around and risk getting hunted and killed, which loses you money, in order to correctly identify the ghost. So I tend to be more of the bailout school. Anne's a little bit more of the stick it out school. So sometimes I wait in the truck while she tries to get the last clue. You never know. Just how I like to do my ghost hunting. I like to come home alive. DDO, we've been playing a little bit. or I should say, I've been playing a little bit. There was a new quest out in a series like Tavern Tales series, something like that. It's a short little adventure where there's a dinosaur invasion led by an Etten, which is a new creature for Dungeons and Dragons Online. It's a very short combat-y adventure. I do kind of like these because I can test out different characters. I really compare their performance against a given set threat, but it only takes me 5-10 minutes to do the adventure, so I can do a bunch of characters and see how they're performing. Anyway, I enjoyed it. It's pretty good. The Eden looks really cool, although, like all things in DDO, you kind of beat him up and then he's gone, and that's it. So, I don't know. It's a fine quest. Nothing super exciting, but a good one for testing out characters. So I've been playing that. I don't know. Played it maybe 4 hours or something. Had some fun with it. I get to play Dungeons and Dragons. It's hard to say what version we were playing. We're playing 5e. Are we playing the 2014 rules or the 2024 rules? Depends on whose character you were asking. Anne and I made 2024 rules characters, and other people made 2014 rules characters. The point, however, was to do some playtesting of an adventure that our game master is going to run at a live event, kind of a D&D camping event. So we were just there to kind of test the wheels on the adventure. I made a druid called Barazona. It's like a level 5 bear-themed druid. And I had good fun with him. He's chaotic neutral, so I got to be a strange person and generally cause a lot of havoc. He was a pretty effective character, though. I liked him. We did a little bit of combat, and he worked out pretty well. So I had fun with Barazona. My favorite thing about that character is we get to pick one uncommon magic item, and I was looking through the list, and I was min-maxing my stats. So I had very high strength, very high con, very high wisdom, and everything else was dumped out. We were using point buy. And so I saw that there was a headband of intellect, and so I had the opportunity to have a 19 intelligence despite dumping it at 8. So I took that, and I thought that would be really funny. And I thought, maybe the wizard that made him for him had the idea that, like, Barazona didn't really understand how stupid he was because he was too dumb to really realize he was that dumb. Kind of the Dunning-Kruger effect, almost. And so he made a headband of intellect for him so that he could understand just how stupid he really was without the headband. And so the headband permanently has the magical words stupid written on it because he would like everyone to know, despite the fact that Barazona is now hyper intelligent due to the magic item, he really is kind of an idiot. So that was the whole idea behind that character. I was quite amused by it. I don't know if I'll ever get to play Barazona again, but I had fun making it. Also got to use D&D Beyond, which was interesting. Really good character maker. I mean, they've had a lot of time to perfect it, but I liked that I could put in my different animal forms in an area of notes. Now, it's a big character sheet, so there's a lot to kind of discover on it. But eventually I did find I could do that, and it would calculate all the transformed stats according to whichever rule set I was using, and really nicely done. Good job, developers, on D&D Beyond there. Thought that was pretty cool. I also we didn't use like the fancy sigil 3D thing or anything. We just used the regular map tool they've got. And I like it. It was pretty simple. A lot simpler than some of the other map tools, a little more like Owlbear Rodeo or something, but it was kind of my speed. Very easy to learn, so I like that. Anyway, it's my D&D experience. We just played a short game. We played for 2 hours to test a 3-hour scenario. And I thought the playtest went pretty well. Apparently the Game Master wants to do some tweaks, though, so he's going to work on it a bit more. Finally, earlier in the week, I played Chandalar, and you probably never heard of that, but it is a Magic the Gathering game from Microprose released back in 1997. So 1997 would like their video game back, because I'm playing it currently. It's a lot of fun. What I liked about it, it's old school Magic the Gathering, which I played. I haven't played it in maybe 7, 8, 10 years, something like that. So I'm a little out of touch with the game, but it's got all the old cards that I remember, old fogey that I am. And I remember playing this video game back then too and liking it. And you start out, if you play on the highest difficulty, which I did, with a random selection of terrible cards, and you have to ante, so you're constantly losing games and losing your terrible cards, but you're trying to sort of struggle to put together a deck that you can start winning and get on the upslope. So I don't know, like, it could be, it's probably not the best game design, but it works for me. I really enjoy it. It's a certain kind of experience. So terrible for a casual player, but great for an old Magic Shark like me. All right, so that's my week in gaming. Let's talk about life in general. So the first thing I wanted to talk about are tariffs. Yay! Now, I try not to get political stuff into Sig Trent Games too much, and so we're not going to talk about this from a political standpoint. It's just going to be from the standpoint of it really sucks for the TTRPG world. A lot of game companies are having existential crises right now, and So hard. Existential is a little bit different. Extendential. Can't do it. Anyway, they're worried that they're not going to exist anymore. And that's not good for anybody, because what happens is you place a large order to a factory in China, they ship it over, you have already sold a lot of those products over on Kickstarter to your backers. You probably also pre-ordered and sold some to distributors who are going to sell to game stores, and suddenly those products are going to cost 10, 30, 40, maybe 100% more to you than they already cost. You have to go to your customers and either ask for more money or just say, hey, look, I'm just going to lose more money by actually fulfilling this, and so I'm not going to succeed at the Kickstarter, and then your reputation is in the tank. So there's not a lot of good choices for people. So this is pretty hard times for a lot of game companies who are in the middle of fulfilling some kind of order. I'm sure Evil Genius Games is facing this down and trying to figure out what to do with it as well. So yeah, hard for everybody. I mean, it doesn't affect me because I only have one digital project right now, but it does affect my plans for starting to do print work. I wanted to get into print books pretty quickly. I'm not so big. I like digital products, but I'm not really into making them myself particularly. So yeah, I want to do print stuff, and this is a big roadblock for that, because I would have to charge people a lot more. The cost of printing, even if you're going to print in the US, there's going to be a lot more demand for US printers, and they have to import ink and they have to import paper, and there's higher wages in the United States compared to other places where you can do printing. So it's just going to cost more, which is going to make RPG books kind of a luxury item. And while I think companies like Monte Cook Games, who make really cool luxury books, are cool, and I love those kinds of books, it's not really the kind of printing I wanted to do. I really want to get my game in the hands of as many people as possible. So basically it sucks. Not good for any of us. Now, in the long run, are there some benefits to tariffs? Yeah, I have an economics degree. I can tell you how you're supposed to strategically apply them. Usually what you do is you target a specific industry. Let's say you wanted the printing industry to do well. So you would not put tariffs on the inputs in order to the printing industry, which would be ink and paper, for instance. So you'd let those flow. Maybe timber, which are components in making paper, that kind of thing. So you would not put those on tariff, but you would put a tariff on finished products on the manufacturing. And then what you would do is you would announce those ahead of time so everybody has a chance to try and organize domestic printing and shift their focus. And you don't get that like sudden sticker shock where people planned on it being one price and already pre-sold the product and now it's another price. You don't have those problems. And you can use that to strategically build a domestic industry versus doing imports. Not what's going on right now. So it's a hot mess. And that actually kind of, like, even though it doesn't affect me, I worry about the industry as a whole, and I have lots of friends who are in the gaming business, and Evil Genius Games and I are partners in many respects, even though we are financially separate. The success of Everyday Heroes is my success as well, and my success hopefully helps Everyday Heroes generally. So I don't know, it's no fun. Not a great thing. So if you like to buy books, these tariffs not so good. If you're only into digital products, it doesn't really matter too much, and it won't affect my immediate plans, because my immediate plans are to make PDFs, because I want to get that experience and that skill put together before I take that additional step of the printing, which just got more daunting and more difficult. So I'm staying away from that for a little bit. All right, what else? I started working. I was gonna say, started working. Been working for a while on my job. I got pretty used to that now, but this week, like on Monday, Tuesday, I was feeling pretty good, and I got pretty tired by the end of the week. So Sunday was pretty brutal. I got extra sleep last night, so back again, starting pretty strong, feeling pretty good. Hopefully I can stay strong through the rest of the week and get a lot done. Last interesting thing in my life this week, I started to look into voice acting a little bit. Something I've always liked doing, using my voice to make characters and do performances. My wife Anne was like, I think you could really do well with this, so I really want you to try. So we put together a program of me practicing, doing vocal exercises, doing characters, and there's a whole progression, and then later on I'll start doing demo tapes and some things like that. So I'm working on that on the side. Shouldn't have too much impact on Sig Trent Games, but just sort of a new project for me that I can do. And I can actually practice some of that stuff while I'm working and writing, so I'll be doing that. Okay, well, I think that's it for this week. Everybody have a great time out there. I hope you have fun playing games. Check out the hero sheets if you haven't done so already, and check out Shadow Markets and also Debatable Actions from LPJ on Drive Through RPG, because those sales support us as well. Bye-bye.